my name is Evan Kulik. When I was in college, I had a surgery performed on my right shoulder to have my labrum repaired. I had that done. Unfortunately, I had a foreign body retained in my shoulder, which resulted in me having a second surgery about a year later and a lot of grief and pain. So ultimately, Mr. Miller was helping me resolve that case. The year between my first surgery and my second surgery was during COVID, so it was quite terrible to start with. Added in with the recovery did not go as planned, as well as, kind of the uncertainty of what was going to be happening as a college football player, trying to get recovered as quick as possible and trying to get back on the field in that small, 4 years that you have to actually play, knowing that it wasn't a good surgery and that something else needed to be done, but not necessarily knowing who was responsible or what the problem was. It was super scary. And then I didn't know if anything would ever be fixed or, the actual outcome would be in my favor. Finding IN was ultimately settled my nerves initially, and then being reassured that, I was going to be taken care of and what happened would be resolved in the correct manner ultimately made my injury, didn't fix it, but it made it a little better. Specifically pertaining to physical restraints, my rehab went for about 3 months before it plateaued and I was no longer making progress. A lot of range of motion issues as far as just simply lifting my shoulder over my head, basic things like opening doors and being able to move it in directions that were supposed to have been reached already but weren't being reached. It caused a lot of unneeded pain and prolonged recovery. The first person who ever told me I should seek legal advice on this was actually my second surgeon. He informed me that he seldomly, actually only one time in his long career, had ever recommended a patient seek legal advice on a case, and I was the second one that he would ever recommend that to because of kind of the blatantness of the foreign body being retained. My mother, at the time, both of us being extremely naive or ignorant to that medical lawsuit world, she went on Avo and asked a question, and Ian responded, and we ultimately set up a meeting with him to ask some introductory questions, and he was the guy we chose to go with. When he first initially reached out, we appreciated obviously the response on Avo, and it was pretty quickly and timely. And I remember him telling me, one, that he had been on the other side of these cases for so long, and he was the actual person who would not give them the money and try to fight them against it. But now that he's on the other side, it's always nice to have someone who is familiar with both sides of the coin. I felt like he would be a better smoking gun, shall I say, for us. But also, he was very thorough. I can remember phone calls at 9:30 at night with him and my mother talking till 11 o'clock, going over stuff. I always felt like I could just call him and he would answer right away. But initially, I think it was his confidence and him reaching out to us saying, hey, you have a case that I can win. I don't know if it was more them or the system as a whole, having to wait. And then it ended up being just under 4 years from the day that it was left in my shoulder till actually, I received a check. So there was frustrations through that time of what's going to happen, why isn't this happening faster? Through and through, 4 years later, it's way better than what he initially told me was possible. At times, and I reached out to him and told him what my problems were, and I always appreciated that he told me as it was and how it is, and then also, what's possible. He got me more than I expected. He would take my calls at 9:30. I'd tell him, there's not a lot of attorneys who are going to talk to you at 8:30 at night on a weekday. That was something I was really happy with. His response was always great, and ultimately the outcome was the best, and that's really all that matters, what he did, and he was beyond successful of what we initially thought was possible. I received a large cash settlement above my target goal. of what I expected and what I thought was fair. Kind of on the more personal side of it, it was extremely frustrating to hear for almost 4 years that nothing was wrong with me and that nothing was done wrong and that what was the outcome of my surgery was, quote, within the standard of care. It baffled me that a surgeon could literally sit in front of me knowing what happened and tell me what I did to you is correct, and that's just what you have to live with. You know, my college football career was put on hold, and ultimately one of the factors that it didn't continue was because of these surgeries and recoveries. Something I worked my entire life to have an opportunity to do, for a surgeon, frankly, to mess up on his end and then deny it and tell me it is what it is, was kind of heartbreaking and just so frustrating. You know, I went almost a year with all of this happening without ever thinking, oh, someone needs to be sued, until someone told me that. At the end of it, it's like, well, finally, the good guy won, or I didn't actually get the short end of the stick. Like, yes, what I have physically, I'll never be the same, and it is what it is. And luckily, I have the opportunity to pretty easily get treatment on that without being financially burdened. But just the mental aspect of hearing what was done to you was wrong, and these people are now being forced to pay for it, that's like a lot, especially because of the other stuff I lost. And then outside of that, financially, you know, I have an opportunity to continue the course that I was taking in college, but really mentally feeling like the door was closed and that what happened was properly paid for. And specifically the fact that I was told verbatim, what was done to you, this is supposed to happen. And hearing that was the farthest from what I knew to be true. So when finally it was settled that they're at fault and they're going to be held accountable for that in whatever way, it felt good, because I always knew that, but nobody else besides really Ian and our team were saying that. My advice to them would be, find an attorney who seems passionate about your case, cares about your case, and thinks that they can win it, because I think that's the first part. When he came to us and said, this is what I can do, this is what's wrong with it, and this is how I'm going to do it, I felt very comfortable moving forward. And then also not being scared to take that first step of, hey, what was done to me was wrong and that's not okay, because initially we never thought that something should be done, and it just kind of is what it is. It's a very unfortunate thing. I'm going to take my lick and move on as best as I can. But hearing someone say to me, like, this is not okay, this was not right, something should be done about this, and then having a confidence of someone else saying, yeah, they're right, this is not right, you know, you did get the short end here. So being confident enough to go forward with it, and then being prepared for a long process, a lot of bureaucratic red tape and processes.